Hey there. Welcome to a quiet morning in what will one day be the American West, roughly 150 million years ago. The sun is just peeking over distant ridges, a thin veil of mist still clinging to the open pine forests and sprawling fern prairies. The air smells of crushed horsetails and damp earth. And then, out of that haze, something enormous starts to move. A living roof of zigzagging plates glides through the half-light like someone glued a row of medieval shields onto a rhinoceros and told it to go vegan. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Stegosaurus, the dinosaur that looks like it lost a bet with a garden trellis and still somehow came out winning. Long before T-Rex was even a twinkle in evolution's eye, this guy was already strutting across the seasonal floodplains we now call the Morrison Formation, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, the greatest dinosaur graveyard on Earth. Picture a landscape of lazy rivers, scattered conifer woods, and giant ferns swaying in the breeze. That's home from about 155 to 145 million years ago, deep in the late Jurassic, when the planet was one giant all-you-can-eat buffet for anything with scales and a decent pair of legs. Size-wise, let's put it this way, up to 7.5 meters long, almost 4 meters tall if you count those ridiculous backplates, and tipping the scales at 3 to 5 tons. In modern terms, it's a small dump truck that runs entirely on salad. When a herd ambles past, the ground trembles just enough to make the little lizards scatter and the early birds rethink their life choices. Now come in closer. From above, those iconic plates are impossible to miss. 2 staggered rows running down the back like a very enthusiastic kid tried to build a shark fin out of dinner plates. Each one can stand 60 to 70 centimeters tall, triangular, and covered in a web of blood vessels. Yeah, inside they're basically hollow with a built-in radiator system. Paleontologists used to argue for decades. Armor? Display? Pure vanity? Turns out it's all of the above, but the real MVP function is thermoregulation. Cold morning? Stegosaurus turns broadside to the sun and soaks up heat like a living solar panel. Sweltering noon? It angles the plate's edge on to dump excess warmth. Eco-friendly before eco was even a word. And then there's the tail. Oh boy, never, ever sneak up on the tail. 4 spikes, each up to 1 meter long, officially named the thagomizer, after a famous Far Side cartoon that accidentally became real science. That tail is flexible sideways like a baseball bat made of pure spite. Swing radius? About 2 meters of instant regret. We actually have Allosaurus fossils with neat round holes in their pelvises that match those spikes perfectly. Lesson learned the hard way. Tail end approaches are strictly off limits. A typical day for Stegosaurus is gloriously low-key, if you appreciate the art of slow-motion grazing. Dawn, the herd shuffles to the riverbank, lowers those tiny heads, and starts vacuuming up ferns, cycads, and low shrubs with a narrow beak full of tiny peg-like teeth. No chewing tough pine needles for this guy, only the soft stuff. After breakfast, it's basically a leisurely stroll that would make a sloth look hyperactive. Babies stay in the middle, surrounded by a walking fortress of mums and aunties. Very wholesome, very spiky. Midday gets hot, fast. Heat shimmers off the red dirt. The plates glow as blood rushes through them, dumping warmth like natural radiators. When it becomes unbearable, the whole herd drifts into the shade of conifers, standing there like armored buses, waiting for the temperature to drop. Then comes the moment every nature documentary waits for. A fully grown Allosaurus. 9 meters of bad attitude, slides out from the tree line. It's been watching a young Stegosaurus that wandered a little too far from the group. The air goes still, the herd freezes, and then, in perfect synchrony, every single adult pivots, plates flare upward, tails lift. Suddenly, there's a wall of spikes and bad intentions. The predator feints once, twice, then catches a warning swing that whistles past its snout close enough to part its feathers. One more half-hearted lunge, another near miss, and the Allosaurus decides today is definitely a chicken day. It slinks off, probably muttering about unfair working conditions. In the grand food web, Stegosaurus isn't the king, and definitely not the fastest. But it's a vital middleweight, a walking plant-munching tank that turns ferns into fertilizer, and, indirectly, into predator food. That's why it needed the deluxe defense package. Solar sails on the back, medieval mace on the rear. Millions of years later, floodwaters sweep an old individual into a river bend. Mud and sand pile on season after season until pressure and time turn flesh to stone. Fast forward through geological chaos. Layers rise, erode, and one day a paleontologist's pickaxe rings against something impossibly beautiful. Today you can stand beneath a mounted skeleton in London, New York, or Denver, watching kids crane their necks and whisper, "Mom, it's a dinosaur with built-in solar panels." From prehistoric sunbather to museum superstar, not a bad retirement plan. And so, as the Jurassic sun finally dips below the horizon, golden light catches those zigzag plates one last time, turning them into glowing stained glass windows on a moving cathedral. The herd lumbers out of sight behind a curtain of ferns, footsteps fading into a world that no longer exists. They weren't the fastest, the smartest, or even the friendliest. But for 10 million years they lived life on their own terms, gentle fortresses that only ever swung their weapons when there was truly no other choice. Maybe that quiet confidence, that glorious, stubborn weirdness, is exactly why we still stop and stare whenever we see those plates towering above us in a museum hall. Somewhere deep down, we can't help but smile and wonder, mate, your days must have been pretty chill.